Thanks, guys. My name's Lynne, and as you can see, I'm a Photoshopaholic. And today I'm going to show you some of my photography. I like to call it creative photography. It can be called altered reality or surreal, as you'll see as we go along. My background, as Karen said, is in graphic design, and I was a graphic design student here, same time as Dave here. We were in class together. So I will show you a little bit of design and how my design has helped my photography and how now my photography helps design. And you will all know that design and photography go together hand in hand, because within your design you use photography, and within your photography you've got to know layouts and how things work, all these rule of thirds and all that sort of thing, which I didn't know about until I went to enter a competition, and the judge stood up and said, well, the author of this image certainly knows, certainly got everything on the rule of thirds. I thought, have I? I didn't even know what the rule of thirds were. I thought, I'm obviously better than I actually thought. So, and he was going, she's done this and she's done that. And I had no idea, but I obviously did it automatically because of my graphic design. So I'll show you a little bit about my design. It's only a very tiny bit of design. You probably can't see this very well because I thought it was going to be on a projector. So a little bit about myself. So was in college here from 82 to 86. I think in those days it's a lot easier to get a job in design than it might be for you guys now, I'm sorry to say. Software, I use Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. Those are the main ones. Might use a couple of other things. But I started off with Quark Express, but a company I went to work for said we only use InDesign, so there you go, get on with it. And so I did. And you can see there in the photographic distinctions, the letters there are the letters that I have after my name to do with photography. And they're in a competition type of thing all over the world. So I enter competitions nationally and internationally. So these are some of the companies that I've done design work for. So they range from people you'll know to companies you won't know. So some of them quite famous, some of them not. So I've done lots of work for lots of different companies. These are just a few now designs I've worked on. So this was a campaign. And the thing about your design nowadays, it's got to work on all platforms. So it's got to work in print, it's got to work on the web, it's got to work, you know, you've got to be able to do these campaigns so they work through radio and things like that. So it's when we started out, we didn't even have a computer, did we, Dave? Just had a pen, a piece of paper. A lot more simpler then. So this is one that I did for Manchester University. Just a little conference they had on, really tight deadline on this one, but really fun to do. Love the quirkiness. College Cambria, there's a campaign that we did to get more students into the college. So the idea was, as you can see now, graphic design and photography here together, and the quirkiness of it is showing that they do things from hairdressing to animal care. So they were trying to, through the campaign, show the wide variety of courses that they do, and I think we captured it quite well in a fun way that makes people want to look at the image, which I think is the main thing with design. You've got to have impact that people will want to look at your work, and that's what makes it stand out from everybody else's. So I've done the manifesto for Plaid Cymru for the last 3 or 4 years. So that was that one. Physio, this is a physiotherapist locally to where I am. I'm from Colwyn Bay, so down that end. And this was a delicatessen called the Cheese Room. Simple little logo, but worked really well on lots of different things. So let's get to the interesting bit. the photography side of things. So me in a nutshell, 32 years as a graphic designer. As Karen said, 2012 started doing photography because I joined a camera club. And within the camera club, you enter internal competitions. And then when you're good enough, you can enter national and international competitions. And then you hopefully win some shinies. So you might all think, what on earth is she talking about? This is what I'm talking about, if it'll change. So this is one of my images, and this is what I'm going to be talking to you about today. This is called It's All Going Swimmingly. So within the competitions I enter, I have to photograph every single element of my finished image. I can't use stock imagery, I can't use anybody else's imagery, I can't use imagery off the internet, and I can't use imagery that another person might have photographed. So otherwise you get disqualified and it's classed as cheating. So every element of all the pictures that you'll see today and all my imagery here is I've taken every bit of it. So if it's a little daisy in the grass, I photographed a little daisy in the grass. So this image has done quite well for me. I don't know if you probably can't see from there. There's the awards down the right-hand side there. So all the images have won lots of awards. And when I go to camera clubs to do my talks, they say to me, are you on drugs? And obviously I'm not. To come up with the ideas, they say, well, where'd you get these ideas from? Are you crazy? You know, what's going on? How'd you come up with, how'd you get that coming up into your head? And I don't know, maybe it was being in college with Dave, you know, that did it. I don't know. So as a designer, you constantly are getting ideas in your head. When you go shopping, it might just be me. When you go shopping, there's certain designs on packaging that you'll see and you think, I don't like that. And then you won't buy the food because you don't like the design. Well, that I do anyway, so here we go. So they're called composite images. So what is a composite image? Oops, it's jumped a bit. It's not moving. There we go. Right, so a composite image is an image made up of various photos put together to create a unique photo. So it can range from something really simple, as if you've got an image and you've just changed the sky, or it can be really, really complex, where absolutely every bit is a different image. So you end up with hundreds of layers in your Photoshop file. So this shows a simple one. So that's just had the sky changed behind it. And then that's a more complex composite image. So it's both ends of the spectrum, from simple to a little more complicated. So this is called Shiver Me Timbers, and this was at the Conway Pirate Weekend, which they have each year. They all dress up, so this guy was dressed up, and he didn't notice I was taking the picture. I'm not sure what was in his bottle. Could have been Ribena, or it could have been a bit of rum. And then they had boats just firing cannons and all that sort of thing, where they do like reenactments and all that sort of thing. So they're all separate elements. The background's Conway, the ship was another image, and then the pirates another image. And then over the top, if you can actually see, it looks a bit textured. It looks a bit old. So those are just textures. So I will photograph rust. I'll photograph stones, rock, anything that interests me, and I build up a library of images so I can go, I need a texture, so I go to my library, and in the folder there's an animal folder, there's a textures folder, there's a sky folder, and I'll go and see which bit I need. So I put those over the top to age it. So the best result from a photo composite is that when somebody looks at the image, they think it's real. I mean, obviously mine are real. You're supposed to laugh then, guys. In disbelief. Maybe you think they are real. Yeah, so when anybody looks at it, they think, wow, that's real. So I really pride myself in, you could take a magnifying glass to my work and you will not see any joins. If you do, Just come and tell me quietly, don't shout it out. This is for Cod's sake. I like to put a bit of humour into my images. I like to make people smile if I can. If they laugh and then the judge gives it a poor mark, it doesn't really make me very happy. Sometimes they do that. And when I talk about judges, when I put my images into these competitions, they're all very serious. They have 3 judges, and they've got a keypad from 1 to 5. So your highest score, 15. They don't usually score anything less than 2, so usually the lowest mark is 3. But they've only got 5 seconds to see the image. So your image has to be impactful. It has to jump out at them straight away. So if they've got longer to look at an image, they might possibly score that higher in the end when they've looked at it and they've seen more things. For instance, this image here, which is Yellow Submarine, never really scored well in competitions, unless it was a print competition when the judge had a long time to look at it, because then he could see a lot more of the detail. Whereas these images have that punchy impact straight away, they do better in the competitions. It's stuck again. There we go. Right, so there's a prerequisite to any good composite. Does anybody know what that is? What do we need to be able to start this image in the first place? An idea. Yes, good man. A bright idea. So without a bright idea, all we're doing is putting images together. And although you might make that look nice, it doesn't really tell a story, and it might not mean anything to you or to anybody else, so it's going to be less impactful. So bright ideas, they come from inspiration. So where do we get our inspiration from? Well, as you're all in the media, inspiration, you'll know as soon as you open your eyes in the morning that you'll see inspiration. There's inspiration on your food packaging when you wake up in the morning. There's inspiration, bus shelter signs when you go to the supermarket. Absolutely everywhere you go, your CDs, your books, in your house. You don't even have to leave the house for inspiration. It's absolutely everywhere. So these set of images now that are coming up are from a couple of artists that have inspired me. You might have heard of this guy. Anybody heard of him? Eric Johansson. Absolutely brilliant guy. Love his stuff, and some of his stuff is really simple but really, really effective. So the road one there on the top left, it's so simple, but it's so clever. And this is in design and in photography and that sort of thing. Your stuff's going to get noticed if it's clever, if it stands out from other people, if you've thought outside the box. It doesn't have to be really, really, you know, loads of stuff in there. A lot of these images, they're really simple, but just so clever. Down here on the bottom, this guy, he's trimming the sheep. He's sending them off up into the ramp, and they're becoming clouds. Oh, it's just, I love it. Oops. Another one here, bottom left. I don't know if you any of you drive, or you're passenger in the car and you're driving along and you see things, especially with clouds. You know, when you're a little kid and you used to look at the clouds and make shapes. I mean, I still do that. Might just be me, but so those are ideas, and that's inspiration. So this guy's obviously been driving along. He's seen the telegraph wires, and to him they've looked like off the sheet music. So he's gone away and put notes on his telegraph wires. Really, really clever, really, really simple. And this cow one here in the bottom left, that wouldn't do very well in our competitions because you can't see straight away what it is. But when you're looking at it, he's thought, well, that cow and the blackness to me looks like a ski slope or skiing down the Alps. And I think this is the way we look at things within this industry. You'll see something, but to you, you'll see something else, or it inspires something else. And I think that's how I've come to a lot of my images. if I can change it. So advertising again, you see billboards around, you see television adverts. It's all inspiration. There's design in all of them. There's photography in all of them. So there is no excuses for not being able to come up with ideas and inspire yourself. Love this one. Very, very clever. Mobile phone advertising. So it's just done with hands, so it's face paints, or in this case, hand paints. But it's really, really clever, but really, really simple. So why did I choose creative photography as opposed to landscapes or street photography or any of the other genres? When I was younger, not that much younger, doing design, we always used to produce birthday cards or wedding cards or anniversary cards for people in work. And I used to love doing them, so superimposing their heads onto a muscle man or something like that. It was great fun. And when I joined the camera club and entering the competitions, I just did this one as a bit of a joke because I'd set up my home lighting studio on a table. It's lovely and warm under the lights. And my cat just came and sat down and put her hand on the mouse. Fortunately for me, she was already wearing her reading glasses. And I just did this one as a bit of a joke. And friends were saying, oh, enter it into the competition. So I started entering it, and it was winning, and it was scoring 20s, which was like the highest score. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't realise you could do this type of photography within the competitions. And that was it then. From then on, it was just, I was away. So these are my son's feet. He does wash them occasionally. And they're my boots. This image has been produced before, years and years and years ago. Lots of people have recreated it. And it was a time when I was kind of learning to see if I could do this sort of thing. So there is nothing wrong with finding an inspirational image that you like, having it by the side of you and trying to recreate it, because it's a really good way to learn how to do it. Because one of the major things on these that can go wrong is lighting. So because you're using so many different elements, you're never going to have photographed all the elements in the same time of day when the light was shining in the same place. So you're going to have images with the light shining from the left, images with the light shining from the right, or even above. You need to know where to put your shadows and all that sort of thing. So if you practice copying somebody else's, you can see then where you're going wrong. And once you've mastered it, then you can start producing your own. This is Sleeping Giants. This is my niece. Likes to walk along a rhino. The rhinoceros is from the zoo. This image never really did very well in competitions, and I think the reason is because that big lump of straw by its front leg. And I know I'm really good at Photoshop, but I did need a leg to work off. And I wasn't going into the cage for anybody. I mean, we've gone into some dodgy places to take our photographs, but I wasn't going in with a rhino. I mean, I've since been back and got some front legs, but I kind of can't be bothered. I don't like going back and... well, I like it because it's my niece, and she likes it. So I think if you like your own images, if other people don't like them, then stuff them. This is Dead Man Walking. So I went to the Whitby Goth Festival. Has anybody been there? No, great place for photography because people all dress up in goth outfits and all sorts of steampunk and all that sort of thing. So this guy was there, and so was the tombstone that he's in front of. But the background is a place called Penmachno up in the hills, and then there's some gravestones there from the gravestone folder. And then, as you can see, I've put textures over the top of that to age that as well. So it's quite scratchy to make it look aged. And they just go on a Photoshop layer, and you knock the opacity down, change the adjustment layer to multiply, or I usually try all different ones, and whichever one looks the best, then that's what I go with. This is Jack Crabtree Engineer. So this is from Bliss Hill Victorian Museum. Has anybody been there? Yeah. I should have hoped that some of you have been there. Great place for photography. So this is the guy with the fence is one image. The guy on the steam train is another image, and then the background is another image. So it's all from the same place, but different aspects brought together. Into the light. So the ground there is a dried up muddy puddle. So I just camera over the top, took a picture. That went into a folder for floors and grounds and that sort of thing. The lady was from the Victorian Extravaganza in Llandudno. She was just walking in front of me. The doorway was from a derelict building in Liverpool. Skies from the sky folder, etc. All You Need Is Love. Now we had themes in our camera club for competitions. So this was my attempt at macro. So I wasn't just going to do something boring. I thought I'll make it my own. I'll make it creative like I do. So this one's all made out of food, so it's quite edible. It's an edible picture. So we've got parsnips for the feet, cauliflower for its body, potatoes for its face, blueberries for its eyes, chives for the grass in its mouth, and then we've got plum tomatoes for the heart-shaped balloons. This is Mrs. Haddock's hat. This is my friend Cheryl. She said, do I look like that? I said, well, when you pull that face, yeah, you do. We had so much fun. Some people say to me, do you get the ideas first and make the picture, or do you just make the picture up and then think of a title? Well, I do a bit of both. This one, I had the idea in my head. So we had to go out and get all the bits that I needed. Didn't think it was too difficult. Off we went to Llandudno. Has anybody heard of Llandudno? And its seagull problem. We have a major seagull problem where it's now actually against the law to feed them. So we thought, well, we'll go into Llandudno because there'll be seagulls there. We need lots of seagulls. So off I went with my camera down to Llandudno. Seagulls must have been on a Seagull Away Day convention. There was none there. So Cheryl said, we'll have to get some bread. I said, we can't feed them. We get into trouble. So we thought we'll go to West Shore Beach, which was a little bit round the corner, with our bread, and then she was going to throw the bread while I took the pictures. And at this point, that's when I found out when she couldn't actually throw. Because the bread is in my hair, in my handbag, everywhere but where we wanted it to be. So she starts getting the bread up in the air. So what do the seagulls do? Because there's hundreds of them now. They've all whistled the mates, and they've all come down because they know we've got bread. So they're all flying upwards. Well, I need them pointing downwards. And I know I'm a bit of a whiz in Photoshop and I can bend a seagull's neck, but they don't have the same position, and it's got to look realistic. Otherwise people say, oh, it doesn't look real. So you've got to get it as realistic as possible. And the more successful you become in competitions, the more people like to pick at you and pull your work apart. So I have to get it absolutely spot on. So here lies the other problem now. All the seagulls are pointing up. By the time, because there's so many of them, you know, the bread's not having time to fall so that I can get the ones that are pointing down. So anyway, after an hour and like a million pictures of seagulls later, I thought I might have some. So we went back and I took the picture of Cheryl. Now the fish is from the fish counter in Asda. Bit of a stinky job photographing a fish because you've got to touch it. And so all the fish in that picture is from one fish off the fish counter. And the fish round the hat, it's not warped all the way around the hat. So I've cut it off here and warped it slightly, flipped this section to make here and then tucked it underneath. So although it looks like it's the one complete fish and it looks really technical and really tricky, when you break these things down, they are quite doable. So when I got home to the editing now, I thought this will be easy, just get a few seagulls, stick them in. No, not that simple, because they had to sit in the image and work well in the image. If I had too many wings and bits overlapping, it looked really messy. So I'm cutting out these bits, and you can't really tell until you cut them out. And you know what it's like to cut out it's a nightmare. I use the quick selection tool to cut out most of my images. Finally, I got them to sit quite nicely here. And they say an image works really well if it has triangles in it. And I didn't know at the time until I had a look after when I thought I'm doing this talk. There's a triangle here. This bird creates a triangle, this bird creates a triangle, and this bird creates a triangle. So I did that without even knowing, and I think that's because of design, and you know, you've worked with layouts for so many years, then you know how things should look and how they look good. This is Don't Look Down. This is one of my earlier images. This is the one that was the turning point, and I started winning lots and lots of awards. This image got into the top 50 of the Sony World Photography Awards out of 750,000 images. A little bit proud, because I only took it by accident. This is one I didn't think of beforehand. I went out, I was walking with a friend, and we saw some geese coming in off the lake. And as they were coming in, they were flapping their wings to get the water off. And I thought, well, this will be a good lesson to see if I can capture movement. So I'm clicking away, looking back on the camera, and thought I'd just missed it, because the one I looked at, his wings had come down. But when I got home and had a look on screen, I saw this one. I thought, I just love that image. I need to do something with it. But I didn't know what at the time. So quite a few months went by until one day I thought, well, he looks a bit like he's dancing, so I'll try and make a river dance image. So I started cutting him out. Because it takes so long to cut out, you know, hair and feathers are a bit of a nightmare. Got down to his feet, and I thought, oh, actually, his feet, they look like he's tightrope walking. I didn't change the shape of him. I didn't warp or move his feet at all. That's how they were. So then I thought, I'll put him on a tightrope. So the strings at the side of the tightrope, the poles, they were flag poles. You know when you go to these fairs and there's caravans and they have those massive big poles with loads of flags on? That's one of those. And then the goose at the bottom, it could well be the same goose, and I didn't warp him either. When they come out and they start preening themselves, they do all sorts of strange angles with their necks. So they are actually straight pictures of the birds, and I just obviously put them into the positions. This one, we can see now, all those awards. It's a winner in the London Creative Awards as well as the Sony World Photography Awards. And it's only done that within about 12 months because with the competitions I enter nationally and internationally, they've only really got a 12-month shelf life because you can't enter them a second time round. You can only enter them once. So it did really, really well. And it was a start. I kind of snowballed then on from there. So this is another one that I did after that called The Early Bird. So I kind of was known as the goose lady a bit after that. As you can see, quite a few goose images. So this is called The Great Escape. So Black Country Museum. Anyone been to that one? So the pan that the geese are in are from there, and so is the stove. So I added the flames on the stove and the steam that's coming out of the pans. And on the little label on there, it says foie gras. And I like to put these little extra things in. And I know I said to you that the judges have only got 5 seconds and it's the impact. If the image scores 15 at the end, they will then look at all the 15 images and decide which ones that they're going to give an award to. So I like to have a little bit of an extra thing in there, so hopefully they'll think, oh, they didn't spot it straight away, spotted it there, made them smile, give Lynne a gold medal. Happy days. So that's why I always like to put a little extra thing in. So I've used my cloud as the kind of hot air balloon. So even the strings on the pan, they were photographed. All those daisies come from a daisy flower. Obviously cloned them, not placed each one. Not quite that OCD. Short shark shock. So these penguins were photographed at the zoo through the glass, and because they're going behind water in the finished image, they don't have to be absolutely pin sharp, although they are quite good. they are through a glass. The only thing you've got to watch out is that you're not taking the picture when some chump with a red stripy anorak is standing next to you, creating shadows and reflections all over the glass, because it actually comes out in your picture, and it's very annoying, and you don't notice it till you get home and it's too late. So obviously that penguin that's a bit shocked, he didn't have eyes like that. They are glass eyes, and I will tell you about the glass eye story a bit later on. And the lady in there, she was a model. Now, I don't usually get models. I usually use friends and family, so it doesn't have to cost a lot of money to create these images. My friend invited me to a photo shoot that she was doing. She was using this model, but she was doing all very elegant and flowery, flouncy, and I don't do that. People have to look stupid in my pictures. I just can't think of what to do with them. So towards 10 minutes before we were due to finish, I found these stripy socks and a tutu and a swimming cap, and I asked her if she'd mind putting them on. And so she leant on a footstool, which obviously I've taken away after. And to get the shark's fin, because I haven't got a shark, I just used one of the penguin flippers and used that as a fin. So a lot of this is also problem solving, which you need to do in design, you need to do in photography. You know, we need to problem solve every day of our life. It's all about problem solving. So you need this in your image. What looks like this, or what can I use to create this? So, you know, on the bottom of the water there, because I just used, I might have just used a beach for the bottom, but I've put the lights in. Can you see the reflections that you get off the water? That was off a texture. I went into a furniture shop, and there was a light, and it was all like this crackled sort of thing. So, I'm having that for a texture. Took a picture, and it makes a great water reflection. 2x2. So I go to the zoo a lot. I love making pictures with animals. So I've been to Knowsley, I've been to Chester Zoo, I've been to Colwyn Bay Zoo. Good thing about Colwyn Bay Zoo, you can go in with the ringtailed lemurs. So that's quite fun because they come quite close to you. So this is various animal images from my little animal library. The arc in the background, if you come out of Chester Zoo, there's a roundabout that you have to drive around, and that's in the middle of there. So I've just added a door and some steps for easy access. So the thing about this is perspective as well. You've got to make sure that you get your perspective right. And when I'm doing talks to camera clubs, they really struggle with perspective because they've come into photography usually later on in life. They don't really have a design background. So they have to be very conscious that they sometimes will have really big people in the back that, you know, they would be giants if you put them into the proper perspective. I don't have a problem with it, I think, again, because of design. And people say to me, what about perspective? I said, why is it wrong? I don't know why I can just do it. It must be something to do with the design brain. Now, you must have heard of the Beatles. You see, there was a whole Beatles section in my talk, but I took it out because I thought they're going to be too young and they just won't know what I'm talking about. I did, to get one of my distinctions, which is one of the letters after my name, the AWPF, you had to produce a panel of 15 images. And a panel of images, they have to work together. So you have a centre part, you have end parts and all that sort of thing. So I decided to do, and it needed a theme, so mine was visual interpretation of the Beatles song titles. So this was my Yellow Submarine, which is one of their famous songs. So the actual submarine was a missile that was on the back of a army truck in a transport festival. It was green, so I just changed the colour. And the one on the top is the same, I just took the motor off the back. The pipes on the top are drain pipes. The lights on the front were off a vintage car. The people on the inside, if you want to come and have a look later at the end, there's a print of it there. You can actually see the kind of 60s silhouetted people there having a disco, hence the disco lights coming out the windows. Now the sharks in the top there, people say, well, why do you get sharks from? You can't go to the sea and take pictures of sharks. You said it was all your photography. That's a plastic toy. It's a good plastic toy. I think they're called Schlick or Schleek or something. You've just got to make sure that you clone off the little plastic joins, and sometimes you have to give them a better eye because their eyes are a bit dodgy. But for where that was, I just photographed it in the garden from different angles, and also the turtle down the bottom. Now the coral and the fish, I just went into a pet shop that sold aquarium fish, and I took the picture through the glass because that's all I needed it to be. And then the Dinorwic is the rocks in the background, and I just use various landscapey things to go in the background of things. It's another Beatles one. Anybody know what this one's? Oh, I've written it down, haven't I? On one of my other talks, I do a little competition where I ask the audience to try and work out what the song titles are. So I've got a bit giddy and forgotten that I'd written it underneath. So this octopus is also a plastic toy, but his eye was, because they hand painted it, it was a bit dodgy. So I took the eye off an eagle that I'd photographed in the zoo and changed his eye over. The flowers were from IKEA. Fish and the coral the same from a pet shop. And the fish you can see swimming in the background is the same fish from the fish counter that was on Mrs. Haddock's hat. So, because it was quite smelly, I had to, really get my money's worth out of them. This is another Beatles one, The Long and Winding Road. So when I create my beetle images, because it was for a theme and because I was doing my interpretation of them, I would listen to the song, I would read the lyrics, I would research as to why they wrote the song in the first place, and then I would make my image from it. So it's because it's about a love song. And the main focal point was the door, because it's the long and winding road that leads to your door. That's why I made it monochrome with a blue door, because I needed to get people to look straight to the door. So because it's blue and everything else is grey, your eye's going to go to it, and it's going to go along that winding road. And because it was a love story, I needed a person in it, but if I'd put a person in the front, your eye would have gone to that person or the back of the head of a person, and that would have taken it away from where I wanted the audience to look at. So I thought, to problem solve that issue, I'll just put a shadow of a person in to indicate that there's somebody there and he's going to be walking up the road. So the keys, some of them have got hearts on. They're linked with doors. They're meant to be my trees type of thing. So that was my crazy thought process on that one. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and Long Tall Sally. So Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the diamonds there were out of a Christmas cracker. They were just some earrings that I'm sure they weren't real. The stalks are asparagus. So you can use anything in the home. You don't even have to leave the house. And I got my niece to stand on a little box with a watering can. I said, just pretend. But they don't seem to be able to pretend unless they're actually doing it. So I had to put water in the watering can over a bucket, which then ended up all over the floor. But she had fun anyway. So, and Long Tall Sally is another niece, using the clouds as her skirt, elongated her legs. She's not really that tall, although she is really tall. Ballerina Dreams. This guy, I used to work with him, and he was big and burly, had tattoos, beard. And I said, Kyle, do you mind coming round and posing for me in a tutu? He goes, yeah, sure. He goes, I've got a black one or a white one. Which one would you prefer? So he came round, and I made 3 images out of the pictures that I took from that day. And I just took them in my kitchen with a little home studio lighting that I've got. The ballerina, I took some images for a friend, and then I just put it into a picture frame. Brick background wall. The floor is actually a piece of slate, and I've just skewed it, so I got the 3-dimensional effect. And that image has won quite a lot of awards. This is another Beatles one, I Am The Walrus. Has anybody heard the lyrics to this? It's absolutely bonkers. And apparently the reason why they wrote it was because there was English teachers asking their students to try and work out what the Beatles songs were all about and everything. So John Lennon thought, right, well, here's one for you. So he wrote this really stupid, crazy song. And if you haven't heard the lyrics, you need to go and have a little look, because they're absolutely barking mad. So it's they say, I am the Eggman, I am the Walrus. So the walrus, again, here is a toy. The eye is the same eye out of the octopus, which is from an eagle. The egg's out the fridge. The man's face was from a guy in Bliss Hill, the Victoria Museum. The guy that's blowing the wind, now I wanted it to be windy, but you can't show wind on a picture very well unless you've got leaves flying around. And I wanted to use this guy because I saw him in Appleby Horse Fair. That's another one that's great for photography. He was playing the bagpipes, and the last time I saw cheeks like that was on a hamster. They're great, aren't they, those cheeks? So I needed to use him in an image. So I thought, well, I'll make it windy and I'll use him like that. So those are some of the awards that one won. It did quite well. I had one judge that said, I don't get it. Why have you got an egg with a gun on a walrus? And he wasn't even that, you know, if he was young, I could understand it. But the guy was in his 60s. I just went, no, oh dear, never mind, move on. So Tour de France, when we enter these competitions, they have different categories. So they'll always have an open colour. They'll always have an open mono. They have landscape. Sometimes they have photojournalism. Sometimes they have creative. I was running out of monochrome images, so I thought I'll just knot one together, which was this one. I thought it'll do all right, get a few acceptances, but it's won so many awards, and I just had no idea why. The character on a bike was one of those street entertainers in Barcelona, you know, the ones that keep perfectly still and you can have your photograph taken with them. Well, she was on that, but the bike was on a pedestal, so the bottom of the front and the back wheel were you really couldn't see them properly. And the thing about a wheel, because of its perspective, is you can't take a section of any other part of the wheel to put at the bottom, because every part of the wheel is completely different. So I managed to bodge the front wheel, but the back wheel was really, it was just unsavable. So I was taking my son to work one day, and he works in this area, and people had thrown a load of junk, and somebody had thrown an old pushchair. And there was this wheel. I thought, I need that wheel. And he's going, Mum, don't do it here. It's embarrassing. So anyway, I just ignored him. I got my camera, and I didn't know what angle I needed, so I had to take every perceivable angle of this wheel. And I put the old spokes back into it. The road was a road, and I just walked it to go off into the distance. But this one intrigues me as to why it did so well, because it kind of breaks laws or rules within photography. I don't know if it's all photography or whether it's just competition photography, but they always say that when you have a moving object or a moving vehicle, that you should always leave room in front of it for it to move into, so to speak. Well, that doesn't do that. So it's broken the rules, which I love to do. I think we should all break the rules now and again. So I was really pleased when it won lots and lots of awards. And it won a London Salon Award, which was quite prestigious as well. So, what a hoot. Went to Chester Zoo the other year, and he had a baby rhino, so I managed to... He wouldn't stand up, so I had to put him on his mother's back, because I thought, where am I going to put him? He's lying down. He wasn't listening to me. This is what happens when you work with animals. They don't listen. In at the deep end. So this is another one created from the model that I used. So I just got her to do different poses. I had no idea what I was going to do with him afterwards. No idea as to the title or whatever. So I think the board she's leaning, I think it was a tabletop. Excuse me. And the fish is another fish from a counter. I will tell you more about that fish a bit later on. Seagull Squirrel. I wanted to do something a bit sort of cartoony, and I think for the competitions I entered, it might have been a little bit of a step too far, because some of the judges in this photo will, it's not proper photography, it's not photography, it's computer work. but they're all photographed, all the elements. So for the hands, I used one feather and I've just warped it. So I've either puppet warped it or I've just used the warp tool, depending on what I needed. So the eyes again are a glass eye. The beak on the seagull on the right is an eagle's beak, and the beak on the right-hand bird, sorry, right on this side, is a seagull, and the one on the left is a hawk or some wild bird. So I just put them on the rocks next to what I created as the sea. I will explain to you how I made the sea a little bit later on. Same fish again. Humpty Dumpty was pushed. So this is the same egg from I'm the Walrus and the face from Mrs. Haddock's hat. I asked my son if he could just take a picture of his hands. The background is, I think it's a National Trust building. And then the wall, I just went out round where I live and took a picture of a wall. So image construction, I'm going to show you now, frame for frame, how I make an image. Brace yourselves. So battered cod, this image is called. It's won all those awards listed underneath. And this is the finished image. Now, the eyes are glass eyes, human glass eyes. They cost £2,000 for a glass eye. I didn't buy it. It was my friend's daughter was ill and she lost an eye. She had a glass eye. So she didn't need this one anymore because she'd got bigger and had to have a bigger eye. So I borrowed it, as you do. So £2,000, because what they do apparently is they put the eye in and the lady actually hand paints all the flecks and everything in to match your other eye, which is amazing. So the boxing gloves are, do you know, sometimes those like old people have things dangling off their mirrors in the car and they have a little bit boxing gloves. That's where they're from, but they were black. The fish is from Morrison's, this one. It's not a cod, it's a bream. But all the fish in that image are one fish. They've just been warped and had different things done to them to create them. So these are all the images I used to create that image. So this is that crackled effect that I told you that I used to cause the reflection on the bottom of the sea. It's come in really handy, that as a texture. Now my water, which the top bit here, and I've used it on the seagull ones as well, I got a vase full of water, which is the bottom 3 images there, and got my son to stir it quickly, pulled the spoon out, I took the pictures. So I've used various bits of those, and that's how you can create bubbles and the top of water. So as you can see, the boxing gloves are there, and the fish, because he was dead, I had to lift his fins because they looked a bit floppy, and then I would just clone out my hand. So I just did it in all different positions, left it on the table while I went back to the computer just in case I hadn't got quite the right angle. So if we look at this next one, I put the picture in the middle so you can kind of put all the bits of the jigsaw together. So this is how we start off, with a bit of a background. Obviously I've done a little bit of work just with a vignette where it's lighted at one side where I wanted the light to come in. There, can you see that slight difference? That's when I've put the texture in to give the water. So here comes the water out of the vase. So when you start doing these and you do cut out, you think, oh, well, how does she get them to look so perfect? Well, they don't to begin with until you start blending it all in. So if you do try and do something like this, don't worry that in the beginning it looks like you've cut it out of a magazine, because mine does until I start blending it in. So a little few more bubbles there. Bit of light. Now I've taken his old eyes off. Fin. Now if you can see the eye, because I put the eye on, he's got no eyelids. So I took part of his lip, and then I warped it to make the eyelid. So if you look at the one that's going to come up now, if it does, hang on, there we go. You see that? So that's created from his lip. So there's our other one. You've got to be really mindful of where your light's coming in from. And if your image has been photographed that you're using that's got light from a different angle, then you can always dodge and burn to change the lighting, so darken down the areas that are lighter and put some artificial light in. So to make this fish look angry, the one on the left, I just went and researched animated cartoon characters with an angry face. So, is he moving? Yep. So the lip, making it look like that, made him look a bit more fierce. So the lip again was probably off the other fish. And his eye, just by making, if we can go back, making his eye slanted, look how angry he looks. So he's had a glass eye as well, and I changed the gloves to red. And also, on, you know, you have a Lonsdale written on this boxing equipment. Well, mine says fishtail. So those are the little, you know, I said I like to put little elements in. So a few more bubbles. So these fish again are the same fish. And they look very in the foreground at the moment. So what I did is I just knocked them back so it gives it a little bit more three-dimension. And then photo filter over the top, an underwater photo filter to make it all come together. And there you have it. Easy. Mousetrap. This is my cat Boo. I wanted to base this round Garfield. He's not really this fat, my cat. Well, he's quite fat. So I enhanced his nose. The mouse tail, the cat's brought the mouse in, and that's all that was left, so I could only have the tail out of the mouth. So I thought that'll work okay. They did bring in, a few weeks later, a whole mouse, and my son thought I was very weird when he saw me posing it in the garden and taking lots of pictures of it. You never know when you need a mouse. So I put a little mouse trap in the wall, a mouse hole in the wall, and there's a few little footprints. Those are my little thing again, not that everybody will see them straight away, but they'd see them in if they look closely. And then the cheese was out the fridge, mouse trap was from the shop. So to get the cat to do that, because he's not having any of, can you just do this pose? I wasn't having any of that. So his arm is one arm and it's flipped. His legs are actually his arms, because if you know a cat's leg, it's actually bent, but it didn't look good, so I wanted him to look like Garfield. So his head's one image, then his arms and his belly and his legs there, they're all different images and they're all stuck together. Better get a move on, haven't I? How are we doing for time? Peekaboo, giraffe image from the zoo. He wasn't doing that. I had to kind of cut him up and encourage him. But that won Image of the Year in the Photographic Society of America. And there's a trophy down there. It was in their book. So this way up, this is a newish image that I made 2 or 3 months ago. That's my dog, Cush, and Boo's there again. The meerkats aren't mine. They're from the zoo. I just took a picture of a box from work. You'll see me fish down there again, and the use of the vase water. And the sail at the back was a shirt that I've just put on the washing line and photographed it, and then I've warped it to how I want it to go. Toilet duck. This is another newish one. Didn't have a toolbox, took my camera in my bag, went into B&Q, photographed one of their toolboxes, brought it home, shoved a load of brought the picture home, and then photographed some tools and shoved them in, and Then I had to get the toilet paper and like put it all around the room. And then I went through all my goose pictures and found one that was kind of had its bottom in the air. So I pinched some legs off another one and the wing. And there you have it. 2 for 1. Here's this is Boo again with the mouse that I was dead. I didn't kill it. It's fair game. So I just posed it in the garden and leaned it against things. So it hasn't actually, I don't know if it's, yeah, it has got feet, this one. Yeah, I did another one, it didn't have any legs. So this is My Life is Pants. This one's doing really well. It's winning lots of awards at the moment. The hardest thing of that is trying to find large Y fronts. They just don't sell them anymore. The big knickers were from Primark. A Tale of True Love. There's some of these in here now that I'm going to be making greetings cards out of, and this is one of those. So this was in Colwyn Bay with the ringtailed lemurs. You're allowed to go in the enclosure with them. So they were sitting like that. My friend says it's rude. I think she's just got a dirty mind because they were just having cuddles. And I warped the tail and I duplicated it and put it onto the other side. Flippin' love you. So bought some helium balloons, not that many because I'm a bit mean. So I just bought 3 or 4 and then duplicated the rest. Got to be careful with those balloons because they're so shiny. They get shadows and reflections on them. So you want to be careful where you photograph them so you don't suddenly realise when you finished your picture that you've got somebody putting a stupid face in them or something. So make those into greetings cards. Don't usually put anything on the front so they can be used for birthdays, Valentine's or anything like that. So I'm going to do another image construction for you now. This is called A Wild Goose Chase, and this is this image up here. This is one of the images I was a bit bored, so I thought I'll go through my stuff, see what I've got. And I just started putting the goose on the bike because I'd cut out the bike for the other image that you saw, Tour de France. And to cut all those spokes out was a bit of a nightmare. So I wanted to have good use out of my penny farthing. So this was the image to do it. So all I did first of all was to put this goose on the bike, and then the rest of the image progressed from there. But I'm going to show it you the other way round. So the goose on the bike will be the last bit you see. So there's the finished image. Anybody got any ideas how many layers you think this might have taken? All those daisies were from one flower, although they didn't have a layer each, obviously. Anybody? Come on, Dave. What do you think?
90.
Nearly.
Do I get a prize?
No, because you weren't spot on. If you'd have been spot on. It's about 107 layers. Here are all the images. There may well have been some more geese. The lamp is not the right lamp, but I couldn't find the one I used. So you've got the road at the bottom there. That was from one of them, the museum, some skies, the daisy, various geese. And then you can see the lady on the bike here. So you see the problems I had with the wheels there. So there it is with the picture, so you can put all the bits together. So we start off with the sky, bit of cloud, just warped a bit of a landscape picture. Now with the trees there, you know when you're wanting to cut out and put an image in when there's trees, and you don't want to be cutting out trees and twigs and stuff like that, it's a bit of a nightmare. So what I just do is I put a layer mask. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? Some of you will, sorry if you don't. And I will just take a little bit of it out and feather it with, just put the percentage down when you're rubbing it out. So it blends into the sky, so you can get away with without cutting it out properly. There we go, so there we've got our lamp. Now, things with these lamps, when you photograph them, they're usually by a tree. So that you can see the tree through them. So I had to cut the glass out and then make my own. You see that? So no glass, glass. So in goes our other ones, and our road. So the geese are coming now. Should have this to music, shouldn't I, really? So all the geese are individual, and they've all got shadows under their feet. So, as you can see there, the bike hasn't got the spokes in it at the moment because of the way that the picture was. On the original, the lady's leg was covering the forks, so I didn't have any forks in the bike, so I had to make those out of this here. So we can go the spokes. You'll see that's the old wheel on the back of the bike there, so you'll actually see the new wheel going on in a minute, hopefully. There's the forks, and there's the back wheel. And I actually put a little footrest because I knew that somebody'd say, how's that work? But he hasn't got any pedals, can't reach the pedals. Somebody did say, somebody came up to me and said, do you know your Wild Goose Chase picture? Is it freewheeling or has it got a pedal? Honestly, I said, well, next time you have a look at it, have a closer look. So he hasn't got a leg at the moment. Now, do you see on the picture here how his wing is holding the handlebar of the bike? I didn't warp it. All I did was cut a section of an outside part of a wing and then just stuck it on. So it looks like I've been really, really clever when I haven't. So there's his other leg. And there it is. Easy peasy. So from that, I made some more images of my goose. And this one, wash day. So that's from Bliss Hill, the building there, if anybody remembers it. She's got her curlers in, hanging out of washing. Oops. Sir Francis Drake, this is another one in that series, and I'll tell you why I made a series of them in a minute. And I've got lots of seagulls, so as you know, so I always try and stick a seagull in the picture. So these are going to be made into greetings cards. I'm trying to get them into galleries. They're going into restaurants and cafes and that sort of thing to sell them as prints, different sizes and that sort of thing. So what's next? What's next is A Little Birdie Told Me, which is a new brand that I've created for a book I've written. Now the image, A Wild Goose Chase, and I put it onto a Facebook. It was a Photoshop and Lightroom Facebook page, and a lot of people on there are from America. And I had over 2,000 likes in one day for this one image. And they're all saying, oh, wouldn't it make a really good children's book cover? So I wrote a book, and I've under the brand of this A Little Birdie Told Me. So it's called A Wild Goose Chase. And it's all based on my picture that I originally made. And basically what happens is, has anybody read The Gruffalo? It's a similar kind of onward story like that. So Lucy, the goose, Lucy Goosey, she was so desperate to have her own egg. She'd been looking after other people's eggs and she just wanted one of her own, you know, and one day she finally laid her own egg. So she's got it in her little nest there. The furniture in the background is from a 50s museum, so I've got my little birds going up the wall. And I've actually changed the pictures on the mantelpiece to pictures of geese. So she's so proud of this egg. She thinks, I need to go and take it out and show all my friends. So she puts it into a little nest pram and off she goes through the park to show all her friends. She's so proud. Now she's counting down the days because she's only got 28 days till her egg hatches. And there's so much to do before your egg hatches. There's you've got to get all the house right. You've got to do all your cleaning. So she's marking down her dates. She's making sure all the washing's done. So she's nipped outside to put the clothes on the line. And when she come back in, the egg has gone. She's mortified. What's she going to do? how's she going to find her egg? Where's it gone? She's taken all this time to get an egg, and now she's lost it. She's only out for a second. So she goes, I know, I'll go and see old Mother Goose. She'll know what to do. So if you see on the tree there's a wanted, have you seen this egg sign? Another little quirky. So she says, you should go and see, who did she say? She's going to see, the professor. He's got a hot air balloon, and he'll be able to help you find your egg. So if you can see, I've used some of my photography for some of the images, and I created new photography for the ones that I didn't have. So off she goes to see the professor, and up they go in the hot air balloon, and he reckons that from up there they'll be able to find this egg. But they can't find it. So the professor says, I've got a captain who's got a really good boat. He'll be able to go and have a look to see where this egg is. So she goes to find the captain, and there she is on the bank waving him off as he goes with his binoculars to look for this egg. Needless to say, he can't find it either. So he says, don't worry. Who does he tell her to go and see? I can't remember. Let's go and see his friend the acrobat. So he goes to see his friend the acrobat. Can you see where I've pinched this picture from? So she goes to the acrobat because he can see up high, and needless to say, he can't see it either. So he said he's got a friend with a fast bike. So she goes to see the friend with the bike. And there she is running behind with a little hat on. And he's absolutely adamant that he'll be able to find this egg. So off they go, cycling away, trying to find the egg, and they can't find it. She's absolutely mortified. She's crying her eyes out. She's got little tears coming out of her eyes. And then all of a sudden, she hears this tap, tap, tapping and a crack, crack, cracking. And the cat lets out a sigh, and he stretches, and the egg is underneath the cat, and it's been there all the time. Don't you just love a happy ending?
Spoiler alert.
Thank you very much, guys. Has anybody got any questions?